Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, in our teacher training program, we will gain knowledge about Cambridge and other different aspects of teaching and other learning methods. But before starting the program, I would like to shed light on some important aspects. That is, since Safir Academy wants to integrate Cambridge curriculum in our society, so we need to focus on some integral parts. For that, first of all, we need to learn the vision and mission of Safir Academy and the insight behind it. So basically, the vision of Safir Academy is to provide high quality educational opportunities and experiences to the young generation in line with our mission. And our mission is to nurture a smart and innovative generation of leaders and workforce who are always guided by the Qur'an and Sunnah, and remain deeply connected to Allah, His Messenger Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the righteous caliphs, and authentic scholars in their matters of life and death. So we should focus on something important here. That is, we are trying to foster a generation who will take their decisions of life and death on the Sunnah and on the teachings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, bearing that in mind, Safir Academy is addressing a very much key issue in education itself. That is, we have all heard of the saying that seeking knowledge is obligatory for every Muslim. But it is important to understand what kind of knowledge. Of course, there is useful knowledge or ilm al-nafi. So we must learn Quran and Sunnah and at least the bare minimum to practice deen. So we do not astray from our path. But the fact is, we often talk about the glorious age of Islam and the age of Salahuddin Ayyubi. Perhaps we do not have a Salahuddin Ayyubi in our society because we do not aim to make a Salahuddin Ayyubi. So my point is basically that an Oxford graduate like Muhammad Hijab or like Mehdi Hassan is the strength of Ummah. They contribute to the Ummah much more better in ways that our voice is not reaching. They are voicing their concern about various political and various educational issues that is reaching millions of people, and that is what we have to do. So, most importantly, if we are talking about Islamic education and integrating Cambridge curriculum, the question arises that why the medium should be English. It is inevitable that to acquire any form of knowledge, language is inevitable. Whether we learn from watching a video or listening to any kind of podcast or lectures or from class or reading, it is inevitable that we use language. And the form of language is very much important, the medium as a language. But the medium as a language, it is most effective when it is lingua franca or, for example, the mother language, because this is the language where we think in. We think in our mother language. We do not actually think in other languages or foreign language. We dream in those languages. So it is important to understand, and it is easier to understand in our own language. But despite the subjective opinion and colonial history, the factual truth is we must learn English. It has become obligatory to us because eventually in higher studies we have to study in foreign languages, whether it be any top colonizing powers foreign language. So eventually, since we were a British colony in Indian subcontinent, so we prioritized English, learning English for higher studies. While in Africa, countries like Benin and Congo or Central African Republic, they use French as their medium and they prioritize French. While in South America, the scenario is different and they prioritize Spanish or Portuguese and they aspire to go to Spanish and Portuguese universities. So the point is, largely our material, and further, that is developed in either English or Spanish or this colonizing powers language. We did not actually study and actually develop a proper amount of content to further our study. So we can see that Western education are largely based on research and education, and it keeps changing. It is very mobile and it is actually malleable in terms of research and in terms of time, because 20 years ago the education system, in fact this particular Cambridge education system was different, and now it has evolved a lot more. To understand the aspects of Cambridge education and what we are trying to do, a little glimpse of history to Cambridge education is required. So basically, the University of Cambridge formed the local examination syndicate over 160 years ago. Its aim was to raise standards in education by administering exams for people who were not members of the university and inspecting schools. So the main point here was administering exams and raising standards. So to raise standards in education, it is clear that the role of exams are unavoidable. So, but in 1998, the syndicate created a new structure leading to the establishment of 3 exam boards. First of them were Cambridge Assessment International, about which we will talk today. The syndicate adopted the brand name Cambridge Assessment in 2005, and in August 2021, Cambridge Assessment came together with University Press to form a single organization, Cambridge University Press and Assessment. The new organization provides world-leading academic research, learning, and assessment globally, backed by first-class teaching and research departments of the University of Cambridge. So it is very clear that the assessment and education curricula, the Cambridge curricula we are talking about as a whole, it is inseparable from research. Research has an integral part to it of this particular curricula. Moving on. So while we are trying to integrate Cambridge curricula in our society, we must understand a few concepts. That is, a system made for another society, which is basically not made for British society, and taking the samples, the research sample or data from that particular society may be effective for that said society, but it does not necessarily mean the same for our society or every other society. So it has to be, because as the values and norms are different in every society, so it has to be customized and it has to be fitted to the particular society according to their population needs. So copy-pasting system never works anywhere, but which we always see in our education that it happens. Even the textbooks, we have been seeing the textbooks, even there are these kind of problems. But to understand and to dive deep in these problems, we have to understand a few of the concepts, that is information, knowledge, education, and indoctrination. So, according to Cambridge Dictionary, information is defined as information is an uncountable noun, meaning facts about someone or something. So we understand information is actually about facts, and knowledge is defined as awareness, understanding of information that has been obtained by experience and study, and that is either in a person's mind or possessed by people generally. So knowledge is basically the awareness after the processing of the information, while education is defined as the process of teaching and learning, or the organization such as schools where this process happens. So it is important to understand that the organizations such as schools are also a part of education itself. And indoctrination is the process of repeating an idea or belief to someone until they accept it without criticism or questioning. So it is largely misunderstood, because you see, the main point is when I repeat something again and again and a figure appears or an ideology appears which cannot be questioned and which there is no logical reasoning behind it. So, although indoctrination is seen as a very negative thing, it's not seen in a positive light, but it is inevitable in education. But because, especially in early stage education, in the lower school, we usually teach manners and norms in early stage. How should we do and what should we do? And oftentimes we cannot really reason with the children, because some norms are just norms because of social solidarity. It does not have real logical reasoning or background. For example, handshaking. So handshaking itself does not have any value. It has a meaning because we assert a meaning to it. It could be anything else. It could be high five. For example, in Saudi Arabia, you go there and people will kiss 3 times in either cheek. So, which is actually unthinkable for us. So, this norm doesn't really have any meaning unless we assert the meaning in it. So, it is much harder to provide logical reasoning to kids 3 to 5, 6 years old, but to indoctrinate them that it is what it is, other than explaining why it is, what it is. So, this was the premise of my point, which I will be making shortly. This was the premise. So, in 2022, Cambridge University Press published a journal discussing the indoctrination at state, which is very important for us. The article was named Education or Indoctrination, the Violent Origins of Public School System in an Era of State Building. So, the short summary of the article was main key 5 points. They discussed about theory of education as a state building tool. The article proposed that modern states regulate and provide mass education as a state building tool. They want to instill obedience and they want to instill respect for the authority, that what they will say, that would be right. So people do not rebel against it. And we can find many historical, this particular article has research on several historical evidence. and they have found this theory and this pattern is consistent across the globe. So there is a case study of Chile, but we do not have to go far back to Chile. In Bangladesh, last 15 to 20 years, we can see this kind of indoctrination, and we can see the fourth point was role of non-democratic regimes, and it was highlighted that the emergence and expansion of public primary education system often occurred under non-democratic regimes, and they used education to mold the masses' perception. So it is largely true for us, for not just the last 15-20 years, for us in general, I would say. Because I could give an example for our history. The main integral part were not often taught in the schools or in the textbook. It was not given. So we were learning, a generation of students has been learning some things which they were not allowed to question, and which is the specific definition of indoctrination. So the implication for modern education system is, this finding suggests that the historical roots of public primary education system, which are designed more for indoctrination than for promoting human capital. In general, the education system did not want to develop the human mass as a whole, but they used it for indoctrinating the masses. So this is largely true to every society, more or less, depending on how the education system is. But we have made a population who wants to work as an employee rather than being innovative and creative, which was the main purpose of education at the first place. So this calls for a re-evaluation of the goals and design of education system to better address contemporary social and economic challenges. The main point to note here is that we must remember this article is published by Cambridge University Press in 2022. It was not a very old publication. And they are calling for the re-evaluation of education system as a whole in general at this moment. So our society, we were talking about this, that if we compare about our society, we will find the same pattern decades after decades. So as educators, respected academicians, it is our duty to foster critical thinking and provide a skill set equipped to our children to be self-sufficient in learning. They must be self-sufficient in learning. They must learn how to learn first, and to be an able learner who will be able to see things from different perspectives and question things and understand things in their own way, and they will able to be understand different perspectives and different opinions, as well as they will be able to answer them. So teachers are builders of nation. So let's educate and let's not indoctrinate. So that would conclude my speech. Thank you everyone. Thank you all.